So it's day 2 of my 100 days of code challenge, and on the day 1 yesterday I have completed 51 exercises from uh, out of 69. So let's continue on from the 52nd exercise. Okay, so here yesterday I was building a form and I was adding some inputs in this cat form, and I think we are going to continue on that today. So here's the step. Now I'm going to add some new form input elements. So add another field set element directly. Okay, I have actually added this field set here, so I'm just going to check my code. Yeah, so this passes, and I'm going to go to the next challenge. Now add a legend element with the text, what's your cat's personality, inside the field set element. So let's go on and add this legend, and I'm just going to copy this text from here, and I'm going to close the legend tag. Now this should work. Let's see. Yeah, it does. Next challenge. Forms commonly use checkboxes for questions that may have more than one answer. For example, a checkbox with the option of tacos. Okay. So under the legend element, you just added an input with its type attribute, set to checkbox, and give it the option of loving. Okay, so it wants me to add a new input with type attribute set to checkbox, and give it the option of loving. Okay, yeah, so we have a checkbox here. Can I check this? Let's see. No. Yeah, I can check this. So if I check, okay, so now the code is passing, so I can go to the next challenge. Now it wants me to add an ID attribute to this checkbox and give it the value loving. So let's check this. Yeah, there is another way to associate an input element's text with the element itself. You can nest the text within a label element and add a for attribute with the same value as the input element's ID. Okay, so yeah, I think last time what we did was we put a label tag, and then inside the label tag we nested the input inside the label tag, and this allowed us to click on the label or this loving text, and then clicking on the loving text would select or check. In this case it's checking this loving checkbox. So that was one way, but another way is we don't nest it inside. We don't nest the input element inside the label. Rather, what we do is we do loving in here, and then we give it an ID. A for attribute, and in the value of the for attribute goes is loving, the ID of the element that we want to associate this label with. So I think this should work now. Yeah, so now when I click loving, then it is checking this input checkbox here. Let's just self close this tag here. Okay, so nesting only the text loving in the label element, that's what we are doing here. We are nesting only the text loving inside, so the input is not nested inside. So, and giving it an appropriate for attribute, and we have already given the appropriate for attribute, so this would work. The text loving should be wrapped in a label element. It is wrapped in a label element. Does the order matter? Let's see. Yeah, that's working. Let's try to submit it again. Okay, so it was supposed to be rendered after the input checkbox has rendered. So now the test passes. So we can go to the next challenge. Okay, add the name attribute with the value personality to the checkbox input element. So let's go on and add a name attribute, personality. While you won't notice this in the browser, doing this makes it easier for a server to process your web form. Yeah, okay, so this would pass. Yeah, now okay, so now adding another checkbox with the ID to be lazy, and the name attribute should be the same as the last checkbox. All right, so let's go on, and I'm going to put this in a new line so it's easier to read. Yeah, so here input ID is going to be lazy, type is going to be checkbox, then name attribute should be the same as the last checkbox. So name is it personality? Yeah, personality. Also add a label element to the right of, so let's add a label element to the right, and the text should be lazy, and make sure to associate the label element with the new checkbox using the for attribute. So what we are going to do is we are going to add a for attribute and give it the value lazy so that it's associated with this input right here. So if I were to go on and check this lazy, it works, and if I click on the text lazy, it should check and uncheck. Yeah, so that works, and the test is also passing. So let's go to the next challenge. Add a final checkbox after the previous one with ID attribute value of energetic. The name attribute should be the same as the previous checkbox. Okay, so let's focus here. So input, this is going to have an ID of, okay, I can type ID of, what is it? Okay, energetic. Type is going to be checkbox. Name is going to be the same as the last checkbox, and okay, this is not input, this should be input. I got to close this, then we are going to have a label of energetic, and now we need to associate this label with the new checkbox. So I have to have a for attribute, okay, energetic. Now yeah, now that is working. Yeah, so if I submit this, okay, yeah, now we can go to next challenge. Like radio buttons, form data for selected checkboxes are name value attribute pairs. While the value attribute is optional, it's best practice to include it with any checkboxes or radio buttons on the page. Okay, so now it's instructing us to add a value attribute to each checkbox. For convenience, set the checkbox's value attribute to the same value as its ID attribute. Okay, so we have to find all the checkboxes that we have built so far and give them a value attribute same as the ID attribute. So there is the checkbox loving, so value is going to be okay, loving. Then there is another checkbox whose value is going to be lazy, and there is another, I think this is the last checkbox, which is going to have the value energetic, and I can submit. Yep, and the test passes. So let's go to the next challenge. In order to make a checkbox checked or radio button selected by default, you need to add the checked attribute to it. There is no need to set a value to the checked attribute. Instead, just add the word checked to the input element, making sure there is space between it and other attributes. Make the first radio button and the first checkbox selected by default. Okay, so when this form is being rendered, none of the radio button or checkbox is selected by default. We have to go on and click on those radio buttons or the checkboxes if we want to select them, but it's also possible to render them checked by default. So when they are first rendered, they rendered is checked. So that's what we are going to change now, and it can be done with this checked attribute. So if I were to add this checked attribute here, then yeah, so this is the radio checkbox, radio button for this indoor option. So this indoor will be checked by default. So if I remove this checked attribute, then yeah, so this is not checked. But if I add this attribute without having to click it, it's by default checked. So, and we don't need to have any value for this checked attribute, like we have in previous input. I think we have used required attribute somewhere. Yeah, so here this is required attribute. So this, like this required attribute, this checked can just be in there and not have any value, and it will work. Now we need to add checked to the first checkbox. So this is our first checkbox. Loving is our first checkbox. So yeah, and now this is checked by default. Let's go to next challenge. Now you will add a footer section to the page. Okay, so looks like we are done with the form. Now we need to add a footer element. So after our main element, we have our footer element. Let's go and submit this. Next, a p element with the text no copyright. So add a p element and then add this text. This should work. Yeah. Turn the existing freeCodeCamp.org text into a link by enclosing it in an anchor tag. Okay, so let's enclose this into an anchor tag. Let's close that anchor tag in here, and right now it's not being styled as a link, but as soon as I add a href attribute to this anchor tag, then now it's styled as a link. So, and in here the href should be this URL. Yeah, so if I were to click, okay, normally this link would bring you to another website. Alright, let's go to next challenge. Notice that everything you have added to the page so far is inside the body element. All page content elements that should be rendered to the page go inside body element. However, other important information goes inside the head element. Yeah, so everything that we have written so far, it is nested inside this body element. But now we are going to add a head element, and anything that we add inside this head element, it will not get rendered in here, so only the body gets rendered as a website. Now the title element determines what browsers show in the title bar. Okay, for example, this text. Yeah, so this text that it's saying learn HTML by building a cat photo app. So this text is rendered inside this title element within the head element. So let's add a title element. Title, and then let's go here and add cat photo app. Yeah, so we can't see this because this title is not being rendered. Yeah, we can't see this bar section in here, so it's just showing us the body. So I think the test should pass. Yeah, it does. Notice that the entire contents of the page are nested within an HTML element. All other elements must be descendants of these HTML elements. Yeah, so even the title or this head is nested inside HTML element, and the HTML element can have a lang attribute, so and it can have a value of what language do we want to set this document to. So yeah, it is just informing the browser that the language of this particular document is in English. Yeah, okay, we are 97% done. Let's go to the next challenge. Okay, all pages should begin with this doc type HTML. This special string is known as a declaration and ensures the browser tries to meet the industry-wide specifications. Okay, so let's declare that this is a HTML file. Who knew? Yeah, let's go to the next challenge. I think this is the last exercise. You can set the browser behavior by adding self-closing meta elements in the head. Here's an example. Okay, so meta and then attribute and value. Okay, tell the browser to parse the markup into multiple languages by creating a meta element as a child of the head element and set its charset attribute to UTF-8. Okay, so it wants us to add a meta and then set its charset to UTF-8. So yeah, okay, so there's some confetti popping in there and we are done. Yeah, so I think I'm going to end this video here today. And is there a project that we have to do? Okay, I will continue with this building a cafe menu on day 3. So